you're in agreement that I can record our conversation, is that correct?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and today's January 6th at 10:08. I wanted to thank you. James, my investigator, reached out to you. And
Right.
he actually got your name from a third party. James did give me a little bit of background as far as your conversation with him, that David comes into the tobacco shop once in a while. The two of you know each other through the tobacco shop and the relationship there. But I was just wondering, at what point does David come in on a regular basis? Is it sporadic? When he came in, how did he approach the whole subject of Rebekah? And did you even know about Rebekah?
No. So this is what I know. So yes, David would only come in once in a blue moon. The last time he came in, I want to say it was early to mid-September.
Mm-hmm.
And what I remember from that, thinking about it since I talked to your PI, and since talking to you, knowing that we were going to speak,
Right.
trying to reconnect what was said and how it was. So when he came in, the last time he came in September, he seemed a little distraught, a little on edge, and he said, have you seen the news? And I said, no. And he said, well, my wife drowned. We went out with the dogs. One of the dogs went in the water. The water was too fast. She went in after it, is what he said. And after that, for the life of me, I can't remember. He wasn't in for very long, maybe 5 minutes, and then he left. I feel like he said I needed to come back down to get cell service and call for help. And that's all he said to me. So that is, I feel like it definitely seems like pertinent information, and I haven't seen him since.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I appreciate this because I know that this is very hard. It takes a lot of courage to come forth and talk to me as Rebekah's mom. But if I'm understanding you right, then David said he was there with her.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Does that not line up with what you know?
It doesn't line up with what we know. We've been informed that Rebekah was at the riverbank by herself, and that a family from Oregon found her things a couple hours later and made the 911 call. That's what we've been told by law enforcement. Did David say where they were at?
No, and if he did, I don't remember. I got a piece of paper a few days ago and realizing what was going on, because honestly, I didn't put together that she was his wife.
Right.
When I read the news of missing person, it's all over the news, and then when James called me, I don't know, just with everything going on, it's I kind of try to stay out of the news from time to time, just to keep my own bubble okay, not overdo it. Of course, you want to be informed, but then after he called me, it hit me like a train, like, oh my God. And I looked it up, the news again. I was like, Barsotti. I just don't know why I didn't put that together before, because I really, I don't see David unless he comes in.
Right.
I knew him from years and years before, maybe like 20 years ago we had met. I used to date Tim. We dated for a little while. He's a wonderful person, but we both amicably, decided to be friends. And that's how I met David, through Tim. And, but, I feel like I'm really still trying to remember everything that he said and how he was, because I get a lot of people in there with kind of crazy stories and crazy drama, and I kind of have adopted a system of like protecting myself and just kind of like, okay, sure.
Mhm.
But that, even I didn't realize when he'd come in that day. And I want to say it was, I'm not even sure if it was September, it could have been August. But I remember him saying, I'm going to settle on September, because I remember him saying I lost my wife a couple of months ago. So he did say that. And that he said that they were both up, plural, training the dogs. I think he said training the dogs, with the dogs just out and about, hiking or, doing their thing. And that she had gone in after one of the dogs when they went into the water and never came up. And that he had come back down to find cell service to call for help. And then he left. I really didn't have enough time, but when he told me this. And then of course there's other customers, I didn't really process it.
Right.
And he's never, in my experience with David, I definitely felt like, because we would have a beer every now and then, or we would, I've never had his phone number. He's never had my phone number. It was not like a friendship, or it was not a close relationship. Sometimes I would do events bringing cigars to the club that he used to be a part of, called The Loft, years ago, before it, that hasn't been around for at least 10 years, I think. But it was a private club, and I would bring cigars there, and I would, and people would buy cigars, and there would be just like a private boys club, I guess. And, there were definitely signs that I felt like he was not the most stable person. I'd known about his previous marriage with his child, his daughter, and that did not end well. I know that there were claims of domestic abuse. And then also another friend of mine who dated him for a while and found him to be erratic, and a couple of red flags there. So I decided to, and just my own intuition of to keep him at arm's length, to not, but he'd never shown any actual violence towards me. I just felt like he could, because as James put it, when he told me, he said, well, it seems like out of all, especially the women that has been in and out of his life, you seem to be the only one that's not claiming that he's threatened in some way or another. And so that was like, wow, so yeah, other than that kind of brief history, and when he came into the shop, that's all I know. And I don't know if it's enough or if it helps, but I would like it to.
When he come into the shop, was that September of 2021?
It was this last September. Yeah, so it was, according to, and him saying, I lost my wife a couple of months ago. Yeah, it was pretty soon after when she went missing. So my boss, my employer, he is also a private detective. He finds it very suspect, looking into what he's able to find with his resources, And it came across my mind because I did see you last week holding the sign for Rebekah on the courthouse
Yes.
lawn. And I was like, oh my gosh, if she approaches me, I will absolutely talk to her. And then there you were. So.
And I met a young lady a couple months ago now that she was in a relationship with David and did leave because of abuse. It takes an incredible amount of courage. And I understand that because I know most people, even if they think they might be able to share and shed some light, are very uncomfortable with doing that. And the courage that it takes for you and this other young woman to come and say, yes, I'll speak to you and I'll tell you what I know, regardless of whether it's small or great. And my whole goal here is to find the truth. And when Rebekah went missing, it was not even reported that there had been a history of domestic violence. That was never brought forth from the sheriff's office or the media. We had to bring that forth at a vigil because no one would acknowledge that.
We're still fighting that to today to try to get the marriage and the domestic brought out.
Recognized.
You know, because for some reason they don't want to say that on a record. Let's put it that way.
Right.
No matter who it is, you know, and that's a big part of the story. And that's what I was telling the police. This is all about domestic violence, you know, and they don't want to look at it from that angle.
We want to bring awareness to the community. You know, that I spoke to a gentleman last week. He thought domestic violence only involved physical battering. And I was surprised,
Yeah.
You know, that someone who's very educated and in the medical field had that limited view.
That psychological abuse did not compute with him. It didn't.
No, it didn't, you know, and it was like, but you understand that abuse that can include and encompasses any kind of manipulation or control over another person to hold fear over them so that they won't do what they need to do to protect themselves. And
Yeah.
So anyways, but our whole goal is just to get closure. Our goal is to find Rebekah. And I guess now our goal is, knowing that David was with her on that day, to find out where were they? Because if he was with her, that wasn't included in what the law enforcement has reported to us. And we were told she was there all by herself, and that it was at mile marker 72. But now I wonder, you know, so our next step will be to find out where on the river were they? Because Rebekah was supposed to go to the Big Eddy, but the law enforcement says that they found her things at Alberton Climbing Rock.
Yeah. So I read, yeah.
So, and that's why it's so important for us to understand that if David was with her that day, then David knows where they were.
Right. Does anybody know where David is? Has anybody seen David?
David's in the marital home. He's at the marital home in Superior, and he's maintained residence there. In March, there was a domestic call, and Mineral County deputies came out, and David was removed from the property for 30 days to give Rebekah time to find her own place and to move out of the marital home. And so he moved back. Rebekah moved out of the marital home on April 10th, and he moved back into the marital home. And so he has maintained residence at the marital home. Rebekah moved to Missoula and was working first at Tamarack Brewing, and then she only stayed there like a month at Tamarack, and then got hired on at Plonk downtown in Missoula. And so that's where she was working at and living in Missoula.
I mean, I can only assume, I mean, of course, you don't want to do any of that with how he'd said, I mean, he had to have been there. And the fact that this is new news is terrifying to me. How he said she went in after the dog and was gone.
And he said that they were together. And he said that they were playing with the dogs together.
He said the words, she went in after the dog. We were up there. We were out. She went in after the dog and didn't come up. That's for sure. That's in stone. Like it was like a hell of a thing to say. Of course, like I locked onto that. But I can't guarantee that he also said, I called for help. I can't guarantee that, just to be completely brutally honest with you. If anything comes to mind, I've got a running kind of literary dialogue that I'm, adding to or scratching out, like because I, had written down that he said that he had to come down to get service to call for help, but I kind of like put a question mark because I'm not certain that he said that. Again, there was other people there. It was a hell of a thing to say and then just leave. And so it was blindsiding.
Right.
I remember going, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, but then I had other customers and I was the only one there, and we couldn't talk, and he left. Said goodbye and left. But I can guarantee that he said, we were up with the dog. One of the dogs went in the water. She went in after it and was gone. He said the words, we were up there. She went in after the dog and didn't come up.
Okay.
That's for certain.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I thank you for your honesty, and I thank you for your courage, and I thank you for your willingness to share that with us.
I'm here for any support that you need that I can give.
I appreciate that. I truly do. I will be sharing this with my attorney.
Sure.
See, the problem we're from Virginia. Montana doesn't like to deal with outside sources. In this case, out of state, like us. Now, if you're in state, you have a little bit more leniency.
Well, we just find that, the people here are lovely.
Yeah.
We have made so many friends in Montana, and so many people have reached out to us. But, there does seem to be a difference in some of the process in state versus out of state. And a lot of that's because we're not familiar with the laws here.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's caused
absolutely.
Frustration on our part.
And if it's folks like you and others that are willing to help us, in our time of need, and we really appreciate that. And there's no other way to put it other than to say thank you. And there's no stronger words than to say thank you. And we appreciate all your effort. And like Angela said earlier, that it's a hard decision to come out and give testimony, on someone. And, and we appreciate what you're doing, and we've had several people that said, this and that, but can you put that in writing? And he'll say, no, we don't want to get involved because we're afraid of him, So when somebody like yourself comes forward, we appreciate it.
No, I'm just, I just can't imagine what you two are going through, and all of the people that loved Rebekah, and I just, my heart goes out to both of you. And
I just, like Gerry said, we just can't express our gratitude and appreciation enough. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
bye.